This recipe is for cheesy vegetable pasties. It's an alternative to doing Cornish pasties. So in my bowl, I'm starting the same as I would for Cornish pasties. I've got 200 grams of plain flour, 50 grams of white vegetable fat, 50 grams of margarine, and this just needs to be rubbed in with the fingertips until it looks like breadcrumbs. I've also put a pinch of mustard in here because that will help bring out the flavour of the cheese, but of course if you're allergic to mustard you're not going to put that in. So this just needs to be rubbed in with the fingertips, remember, thumbs over fingertips, until the mixture looks like breadcrumbs. Once you've rubbed the fat into the flour, remember you can shake the bowl and just get it to come up to the top. This fat was a little bit soft, so it's not rubbed in quite as well as I would have liked if it had been harder, but I can see these clumps on the top are where it's starting to stick together, and I don't want it to stick together. I have to be able to get enough water into it to make it stick. So into my bowl I'm going to put 50 grams of grated cheddar, and I'm just going to mix that into the flour and the fat before I add the water. And then I need 1 teaspoon of water for every 25 grams of flour. So 8 teaspoons of water would be 40 mils. So I'm just going to put in 40 mils of cold water to start me off, and then just stir this up with a knife until you can see that it's starting to stick together. Because you've got cheese in this pastry, you may need to add a little extra water just to help it stick together. Grated cheese doesn't make this the easiest of pastries to work with, but I can see it's starting to stick together in lumps, so I'm just going to clean off my knife and squeeze this together. And after a little while you can tell if your pastry is going to come together into a ball or not. And this is going to come together, give me one ball of pastry. So here we go. So there we go. One ball of pastry there. And this needs to be rolled out to make 2 pasties. So this is enough to make 2 good sized vegetable pasties. So before you roll it, as you know you want 2 pasties, easiest thing to do is to cut it in half and roll it out to get the shape that you want. If you want it to be a pasty shape, then we need to roll this into a circle. If you want it to be like a slice, we need to roll it to a square. So if I start with the square, this will not end up as a square unless you start with your pastry as a square. And remember, you roll once away from you, and if you want to keep this a square, turn it through 90 degrees each time you roll. If your pastry starts to crumble a little bit at the edges like this and you're concerned about it, just pinch it back together along the edges, and you can reshape it into a square provided you've not pinched too deeply, and keep rolling. Square or a rectangle for a slice will be fine. And as you roll this, you'll see, you can see the lumps of the cheese in it. So just be careful rolling. And what we're looking for is a pastry that is not too thick. So I would say about that thin would be fine. So that's my first piece of pastry to make a slice, and I'm just going to put that to one side. And the second piece I'm going to roll into a round as if I was going to make this into a pasty. And it's the same thing when you start off. If you want it to be a round when you've finished, helps if it's a round when you start. So similar, roll gently away from you, making sure that you turn the pastry every time you roll, and then it will not stick to your worktop, because as soon as it starts to stick, you'll feel it when you try to move your pastry, and you can add a little bit more flour underneath. So I need both of these to be the same thickness, and I'm just going to keep going until I've got a reasonably roundish shape of pastry. Okay. So once you're happy with your second piece of pastry, put that on top of your first, clean your worktop up, and then you can make your filling. For the filling for these pasties, I've got a carrot, a single small carrot, which I'm just going to peel onto a plate so that I've got all my peelings in one place. I've got a small potato, which again just needs to be peeled. Don't be tempted to use large vegetables because you end up with more filling than the pastry can hold. So although it's tempting to go, oh, when I like potatoes, I like carrots, and put something larger in, you'll end up with more filling than you can actually fit in. And just half an onion. So I'm just going to peel away layers of the onion and put that to one side. So if you want to, you can also use other vegetables. I'm going to put a little bit of swede in here. I don't want to put loads of swede in because I find the flavour a bit overpowering, but it's the same thing. I'm just going to peel the swede while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil. To give this filling some flavour, we need something with some salt in. So you can either use a vegetable stock cube to help add some flavour to your filling, or today I'm going to use a bit of Marmite. Doesn't matter whether you use vegetable stock cube or Marmite, the important thing is that whatever you're using, you water it down and you get it to dissolve a little bit. So I've got about a teaspoon of Marmite in my bowl, and I'm going to add just about a tablespoon or two of boiling water to it. I don't want to add too much because I don't want to make this too runny. So 1 tablespoon of boiling water, and I just want to loosen up that Marmite a little bit and make it easier to coat the vegetables. Same thing with the stock cube, just crumble it into 1 or 2 tablespoons of water just to loosen it up so that it can coat your vegetables and give them flavour and not just have them sitting there with no seasoning on them. So here we go. Let's start with potato. So the potato, being a round vegetable, will roll as I'm cutting it, so I want to make sure that it doesn't roll. Take 1 slice off first because we need to dice this. Through your fingers, bridge, hold, cut slices through the potato. Not too fat because we want to make sure that your vegetables are going to cook. Take 2 or 3 slices at a time, again, bridge, hold, and cut those into chips. Right, French fry type chips, not chunky chips. Turn that around, cut it across, change to claw grip, cut across, and give yourself a nice small dice of potatoes. So dice those. Got got 2 more slices here to be diced, and then I've got the slice I took off the potato in the first place. So make sure that you've got nice small bits of potato, and that can go straight into the bowl with the Marmite or the vegetable stock. So that's done. That's going into my bowl. And I'm just going to turn that over and start the flavours mixing. The carrot, take either end off your carrot, and it's the same thing. It's quite easy for this to roll. So I want to slice off to stop it from rolling, bridge hold through my fingers and into slices. It's not as big as the potato, so if I do this in one piece, one slice at a time, I've just cut that in half and then just across again to make sure that we've got small bits of carrot that are going to go into the pasty filling. And you can do all of your carrot, add it to the bowl. The swede is going to be the same if you're using it. Into slices, same thing, cut it into slices, try and keep all your slices similar size, and then 1 or 2 slices of swede, and again into fingers or chips, turn it round and cut through to get your dice. The last thing you need to do is your onion, and all of this is going to go in together, remember. So the onion just needs to be, I'm just taking the end off, finely chopped. So remember, through your fingers normally, bridge hold, nice thin slices of onion nearly to the end, not quite to the end so it doesn't fall apart. Turn it round, claw grip, and give yourself nice small pieces of onion. So I've got all my vegetables in the bowl, turned them all over in the seasoning flavouring, and you can see it's made quite a big bowl of filling for the pastry. So next thing to do is get your pastry onto your baking tray, and I've put a bit of baking parchment on my baking tray to make this easier and make sure that they don't stick. So there we go. Put my 2 bits of pastry on, and before I do anything else I am just going to brush them around with egg. So I've got beaten egg here to glaze them with before they go in the oven. There's nothing to stop it being water. In fact, I'd probably use water normally, but as I've broken the egg to glaze the top, I'm just going to use a bit more of it around the edge. So filling needs to be divided between these 2 pasties. This one I'm going to do in the upright shape, so I'm just going to put some of the filling on there, and this one I'm going to do more like a slice. You need to be careful adding your filling because pastry is quite fragile, and you don't want to put so much filling in that you can't actually get it to close around your pastry. So have a look at how much pastry you've got. Don't take it right up to the edge. I need to be able to lift that, and it needs to be able to meet the other side of the pastry over the middle of my filling. And I really don't want too much filling, so that's going to be loads. I have extra, but there's not a lot I can do about that. So if we start with this one, if I want to do this in a traditional pasty shape, you need to lift both sides of the filling and squeeze it together. So I find it easier to do it this way round. So I'm just gently lifting and squeezing the pastry over that filling, and I need the edges to stick together for me, not to overlap but to stick together to keep that filling inside. So I'm just pushing the filling inside a little bit more at this end. There we go. So that I've got that done. So I've got extra pastry over the top, and I can see where the filling is. It doesn't look particularly attractive like that, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use my finger and thumb and just shape the top of that pasty so it looks more like a traditional pasty shape. This second one, where it's a square, all I need to do, rectangle, is lift that up, push it down and seal it at the edges again using my fingers. This pastry is much more likely to crumble and crack because it has the cheese in it. But this flat one, there we go, I've sealed it all the way around, and then again you can use fingers, knife, fork, whatever you would like, to just seal around the edges of the pastry and make sure that it is well sealed. So this then needs to be brushed with egg, both of these, and then it's going to go into the oven to cook. So it needs to go in the oven, gas mark 6, 200 degrees, and they're going to take a good 30 minutes to cook. It won't take 30 minutes for the pastry to cook, but all the vegetables inside this are raw and we need to know that they are cooked before we take this out. So there we go, that's all brushed with egg. Last thing you can do, if you wish to, is make a couple of slits on the top of that, and if you want to, it's not traditional, but if you want to make sure that your filling is cooked, if you just make a little slit, one small slit in the pastry, if you get liquid coming out through that, you know that the filling is done. These have had 30 minutes, the pasties have had 30 minutes on gas mark 6, and the pastry is nice golden brown and they are cooked through.